Thank you for joining us on this edition of Represent NYC. I'm Manhattan Borough President Gale Brewer, and I'm delighted to be back in the MNN studios. Our topic today is the city's new paid sick leave law, which I originally sponsored when I was on the city council, and which was expanded this year by Mayor de Blasio and the city council. Starting in August, actually July 30th, 2014, employees of any company employing 5 or more workers are now allowed to take a sick day for themselves or to help care for an immediate family member, up to an annual maximum of 5 sick days each year. To explain the new law, my guests on the program today are Sherry Leiwant. She is really fabulous. She's also co-chair and co-president of A Better Balance, a nonprofit organization working to advance the rights of working families and individuals, and who fought very hard to pass a new law, and she's been doing this nationally. We're also honored to be joined by Barbara Sibley, owner and chef of La Palapa Cocina Mexicana, a restaurant in the East Village, is on St. Mark's and First Avenue. And for a long time, she's been a strong supporter of paid sick leave for her employees. She's a very extraordinary business owner. Thank you both for joining me here today. It's really an honor to have you. So Sherry, I'm going to start with you. And I think our first question for our audience is, what is the paid sick leave law? Sometimes we call it the paid sick days law. It has many different names. It has earned paid sick days. It has so many different names. And I also hope you'll talk not only about New York, but all the exciting work you've been doing around the country.
Sure. Yeah, I'm thrilled to be here and really thrilled that you're doing this program so that everybody in Manhattan and around the city knows that they have a right to take paid sick time now. And it applies to everyone pretty much in New York City. This law applies, gives paid sick time to all workers in businesses with 5 or more employees. And even for smaller businesses, it provides that you can't be retaliated against, you can't be fired or demoted if you take paid sick time. If you take your sick time, even though for under 5 employee businesses, they don't have to pay for paid sick time. So we fought very hard, and thank you to Gale for tireless
in
efforts.
retrospect.
Over 4 long years, we fought for this bill, and we recruited organizations around the city that represented a lot of the workers who didn't have any paid sick time, and it's hard for people to believe, but there were over 1 million workers in New York City that didn't have one single day that they could take if they or their family members were sick. And we heard stories the whole time we were working on this, workers who had been fired because their children were in the hospital and they had to take a day off, workers who had been fired because they hurt themselves on the job and went to the doctor, and people who were afraid to take time off when sick and had to go to their jobs in restaurants, in places where the public comes because they couldn't afford to take time off without being paid. So we really are excited about the fact that now this will never happen in the city again. No one can be fired anymore for taking a paid sick day, and that 1 million workers who had no paid sick time can now take it up to 40 hours in a year. And we like to say the reason we call it earned sick time is that workers earn it as they go. They earn it at the rate of an hour for every 30 they work, up to a maximum of 40 hours in a year.
And it started April 1st, right? In terms
April
of the
1st, that's right. April 1st
of this year.
Workers were able to start earning the time. July 30th, they can start using it. There's a 120-day waiting period so that workers who are new employees can't take it right away. But on July 30th, everyone can take it, and workers who've accrued it can start doing that. In terms of around the country,
well, why don't we talk to
okay.
and then come
Sure,
back, okay?
Sure,
Then
absolutely.
we'll come back to the national scene.
Okay.
So Barbara, thank you. You really are a hero. We went to so many press conferences and we had so many meetings on this topic that we lost count. But we knew who the heroes are, and you're certainly one of them. So I guess my question is, how does it work, past and hopefully into the future, and having more of a level playing field with some of your other colleagues in the restaurant industry. Does that help in terms of your efforts? So.
Well, definitely. I've always believed in paid sick leave and always given my employees paid sick leave. For one thing, restaurants, a lot of people think it's like, tough, they've got to work through it. And I really think, it's very important. We're serving guests who are eating food that we're cooking. My staff cannot be ill. That would be very irresponsible. But also, it has to do with respecting the employee and supporting them. So I've always supported paid sick leave. Certainly, I think that I'm an example that my restaurant's been in business 14 years, that you could do the right thing and be profitable. There's no reason that they have to be mutually exclusive. So I think that having it, be required of everyone, though, does level the playing field. It does allow people to understand the value of the employees and of the workers that they come in contact with every day.
And do you find that people take it, don't take it? Obviously, they take it if they're ill. How does we all heard those stories, which we didn't believe during the. Because they love you, your workers, so you have a good relationship.
I do. I have to say that I'm more likely the one to send them home. Yeah. I'm not a doctor, but they call me Dr. Barbara, and they call me up, and they're like, and I'm like, go home, go to the ER. I mean, I've actually, and it's not to like say wow, but I have saved people's lives that way. Yeah. The people that have come in after having a head injury, slipping on ice, and came in to do their shift. And as I took one look, and I said, let me look at your eyes. Okay, right now, go to the ER. And they had, had brain hemorrhage happening that they didn't realize.
Wow.
But so, you have to be engaged. And being engaged means you take care of people. If you take care of people, they also take care of your business. Yes. And that's really the biggest payoff that I could say. It comes back.
You should ask Barbara to go to all the states in the United States that aren't supporting paid sick days. But tell me what's going on around the country.
Well, fortunately, there are Barbaras in many cities, and we love them. And I just want to say that having done this in New York was an incredible boost to the movement to have paid sick days around the country as a basic labor benefit, as a basic benefit that all workers should have for themselves and their family members. And there are 7 jurisdictions now that have passed it. We expect there'll be more. There's a campaign going on now in Massachusetts. It's on the ballot there. And unfortunately, the statistics I was citing about New York are replicated around the country. So 40% of workers have no paid sick time.
In the United States?
In the United States, in the private sector. So these laws are necessary because although there are people like Barbara who do the right thing anyway, there are a lot of businesses don't, and so or don't do it for all their workers, and so it's very important to have this kind of basic benefit, and as Gail said, and having a level playing field so that you're not disadvantaged in your competition with other restaurants or other retail establishments because you're doing the right thing. So it's an exciting movement. Because it does not only level the playing field among businesses, but also shows that all workers should be treated equally and that everybody needs to have some time that they can take off to take care of themselves when they're sick or particularly take care of their family members. And that hasn't been recognized before, and I think it's beginning to be.
So I know that San Francisco was the first, certainly they weren't in our opinion, had no major issues that the city of San Francisco wasn't able to solve. And also, I believe, Seattle, Portland, Washington, D.C., maybe you could help me remember the other cities, and I believe the state of Connecticut, slightly different laws on all different situations.
Right, and some of the original, San Francisco's law was very broad. DC, when they passed it, wasn't so broad, but now it's been changed to be broader because there's recognition that that's necessary, that everyone needs to have paid sick time. Our sister cities over the Hudson River, Jersey City and Newark, have recently passed paid sick time laws as well. And as I say, there are campaigns around the country, but you did a pretty good job there of remembering of the states and cities that have done it. And as I say, there are, and San Diego actually just passed this last week. Okay. So it truly, every week there are more cities and states interested in exploring this as a possibility. Ultimately, we would love to see a federal law that applied to everyone in the country, but this happens with a lot of workers' rights things. A lot of common sense programs start out in the states and cities, and eventually people realize this is a good thing and it should apply to everybody.
So, Barbara, to the credit of the de Blasio administration and also to some of the Hospitality Association, to the Restaurant Association, and to some of the smaller business improvement districts and chambers of commerce. I've been to I don't know how many forums, talking about paid sick days or earned whatever it's called. I call it
Earned
paid
sick time.
Earned sick time. And I just was wondering. Obviously, you're kind of in a different category because you've already done it. You know how it works. But from your colleagues in the industry, do you hear that they're getting information? Do you hear that there is discussion about it? Is it just going to kind of happen? I just didn't know.
Well, I think it's interesting when you also when we're talking about how it's happening piecemeal, and I think that one of the things that would be very helpful that I hear from my colleagues is getting more information, but also having it be standard. I think if it was a federal standard, if everyone knew, if it was very easy, if there were payroll companies or software that helped you track it, there's sort of like some practical things that I think that once it is sort of federally mandated or it's really given a lot of support. So I think that's where I think that those other small business owners that I speak to would really love support, is making it easy to track and making it easy to understand. Yeah. And definitely there's been great outreach. There was the other day they were handing out. I was very happy to have gone to a rally and then had my cook brought in one of the pamphlets, the yellow, the yellow pamphlets about the sick days law, and I said, well, here I'll trade you a T-shirt for a pamphlet. So so the word is definitely getting out there, and I think that it can work both ways. I think that reaching out to the employers as well as to the employees really helps get the dialogue and get everybody on board.
I'm glad you talked about the yellow leaflet. I have it embedded in my brain. So we had many volunteers, and I was at the Union Square subway, which is obviously not too far from you and very busy, and it was fun to hand out. Yeah. I think people were surprised that something government is doing is for them. That's always a challenge to explain that we're actually doing something for New Yorkers, because they always think doing something against them or some fine or fee. So it was a very exciting. Almost every subway, at least in Manhattan, was covered. So I'm glad that your chef got a. Yeah,
he brought it in, and I was like, I know where you got that.
That's so great. How many times does a business owner and a chef have on the same yellow? That's quite amazing. So, Sherry, my other question is domestic workers, another group that we included in the legislation. I just didn't know if you could talk about them for a minute.
Yeah, sure. And I just wanted to say also that just to do a little shout out to the Department of Consumer Affairs, which is where we house the paid sick days enforcement, and they have been really trying to get information out, and Day of Action was really a big success. Wonderful. And so I think they really are trying to get the word out. It's not easy. When you have 1 million new workers with new rights, you really want all of them to know about it, and it's challenging, but they are really trying to rise to the challenge. And I also just, as another kind of little ad, A Better Balance is also available to represent. We are a legal advocacy organization. We are available to represent any workers who have problems. We're hoping everything goes smoothly, and that won't happen, but if it does, we are available to represent workers who have problems with their paid sick time rights. In terms of domestic workers, they are entitled from the state law, the Domestic Workers Bill of Rights, they are entitled to 3 days of rest in a year. The city law gives them 2 additional sick days in a year. But we track what the state law says about waiting time. You have to be employed for a year. And then you get those 2 days, all 5 days at once after you've been employed for a year. The challenge with domestic workers always is getting the word out to them that they are entitled to that. And so we are trying to think of ways to do that. There are some organizations that support domestic workers.
Domestic Workers United as one.
Yes, and we've gotten a lot of our literature out, and the DCA has done that too. So hopefully, all employers of domestic workers should just know that their workers are entitled to 5-6 days a year, or 3 days of rest, which can be used for any purpose, and 2 sick days.
Yeah, that's helpful. Barbara, my other question is, when you think about the paperwork and some of the as you said, just the sort of bread and butter in terms of making sure the law goes smoothly. How do most people work with a company that does the payroll, or do people do it themselves? We did have a lot of discussions about this topic when we were discussing how to write the law. And so I'd love to hear from you. I know it's a small point, but it's a big point in terms of implementation.
I think really most people in this day and age do have access to a computer, do their payroll with a payroll company. In terms of my industry, which is so affected because so many food service and hospitality workers were denied paid sick days. The thing that we're finding, we were just at a meeting yesterday, is that a lot of the programs aren't specifically geared to restaurants, and restaurants have a lot of very sort of specific split of hours, people doing doubles, there's spread of hours and different ways of calculating, or so it definitely would be a great thing to have more support that way, and I think the Department of Consumer Affairs could probably help with that. We were talking about possibly, when people get their health department permit, if there was like a list of resources or websites or, different payroll companies, or if somebody out there wanted to, hey, it's a great startup. If there are any entrepreneurs out there that want to start, write some software that's specifically geared to the payroll implementations of this law for small businesses.
And for restaurants
and for restaurants in particular, I think it would be a great help in making this sort of be seamless and easy, because it is true that when you're a small business owner or you run a restaurant which has got so many moving parts, however you can simplify it and make following the law easy, it will just it will be so much easier to adapt and to actually put into effect, and I think it would be very, very welcomed by restaurant owners and by small, as I say, by entrepreneurs in general. I think it would be a great thing. And people really do usually use a payroll company, but they're not so specifically geared. And I think even very large, restaurant chains and things like that, everyone is always having to sort of adjust the software. And I think that if it was made for that purpose, I think it would be a great thing. And so maybe, if there's someone, in all the organizations that support paid sick leave that could help that, it would be really a great tool.
It's interesting you should talk about the chains, because one of the issues, of course, is the chains are all over the United States. And when we had this endless stream of meetings, like to the point that we didn't know what to do with ourselves when the law passed. That was, but one of the issues, of course, and this is why we need the national law, is they have different issues to address in different states. And it was interesting listening to us, because the chains all came to complain, of course, about paid sick days. And how could they possibly have one thing in one state and another thing in another state? Well, if there was a national law, everybody would have to do it. And of course, then the payroll companies would pay attention. But I think we should work on this issue. I'm sure you would agree.
Yeah. We did talk to some of the payroll companies when we were thinking, and they said there was no problem doing it. So, I think we need to get people together.
My payroll company did it right away, and it was very simple. But I know that there's some, people that are sort of still a little confused about it. And
I think
so if you had that, it would be good to make it easy to track. Easy to track the hours is really what you need.
That's important.
So have you also, Sherry, again, I love to listen to some of the national stories too. I know you talked about the fact that New York, having passed the law, has set great precedent. What are some of the discussions that are going on nationally about New York, or people are kind of waiting until after it's fully implemented, which it is by now, but it'll have to have a little bit more testing, I guess, through the rest of the year?
Well, I think that as you know, it took us a long time to pass this in New York. And what has happened is that campaigns have started up all around the country, in Minnesota, all around California, in other cities in Oregon and Washington, Tacoma and Eugene. I have a conference call this afternoon about Eugene, Oregon. And, so I think that the campaigns are starting up, and you're going to see these laws passing. I think that when you get everybody together, the cities, and we have been on calls with all of the implementers in the cities that have passed it to talk about issues that they're facing. And when you hear them, the issues are not so significant. And so since the rollouts have been pretty easy in San Francisco and Seattle, in Connecticut and now in DC, I think it's a good thing for everyone to hear around the country. And that's what we're kind of hearing. I think that the more this word gets out and the more campaigns, because you need campaigns from the people asking their legislators to pass paid sick days. I think you're definitely going to see more of these laws passing. And as I say, that creates, the local laws create agitation for passage at state level, and then the states are going to create agitation for passage of the Healthy Families Act, which is in Congress and has been proposed every year. Originally, the original sponsor was Senator Ted Kennedy. Senator Harkin now is the sponsor in the Senate, and he's retiring. Someone else will pick it up. And we are hoping that at some point the balance will tip and we'll be able to pass it as a federal law.
When you talk about health, and we spent a great deal of time, Dr. Barbara knows this already, I'm sure. But the issue is we wanted to make the point, and I think we'll have to see if you are able to take time to go to a physician, and not everybody actually has a primary physician. I know it's always challenging in some cases, but if you are able to go during the day because you're ill, then you might not go to the emergency room. And so we had these major numbers, we don't know how correct they are, but in the millions, that the City of New York Health and Hospitals Corporation in particular could perhaps save if you have paid sick days. So again, this would be hopefully some kind of an analysis we could do down the line, some years from now.
Oh, completely. I'm sure that would be so much, the savings are going to be huge. And I think that people will really realize that it really makes such good business sense to have the paid, sick days. I can't even imagine for domestic workers. How can you have someone working in your own home who's ill? It's just it's just crazy. And I think that people will really realize that it really makes great business sense, and they'll wonder why they fought it.
Yeah,
really.
I mean, the health issue, does that come up as much around the country? Because here in New York, as we know, we have a phenomenal Health and Hospitals Corporation, and they do have tons of people who come into the emergency room. And it does cost a lot more than going to your doctor during the day. So I think we're hoping that will also be healthier employees and a healthier bottom line for the Health and Hospitals Corporation.
Right. I mean, there's been a lot of attention to the ACA, to the new healthcare law, and
the Affordable Care Act.
The Affordable Care Act, and but the truth is, if people don't have the time to go to the doctor, it's not going to help. So this kind of goes hand in hand with that. And yeah, I think the health issue is extremely important. I think it's one reason that you're seeing these laws pass first in the cities, where people understand you're living in close quarters, you're taking transportation, you go out to restaurants and to stores, and you really want all people to have paid sick time so they can stay home and not expose you. So there is some self-interest involved in terms of voters and in terms of people who may have paid sick days, but who understand that it's really important for everyone to have them. So it's a very good argument.
And the other issue, the way we heard about this first was from school nurses. And in particularly in Queens, where you have a huge immigrant community, people lining up because the children are ill, and the fact of the matter is they didn't go home.
Yeah.
And so these nurses came particularly to a Better Balance and said, help, we need to have something changed. That's actually how we first heard about, at least I did, paid sick days. And then the nurses, school nurses, who were really clear, but they had to be careful because they were afraid of speaking out too much. But they would tell us quietly, please help with the issue of care, health in the schools. And that was a big deal. So we're hoping, again, another aspect of public policy to pay attention to, are there more opportunities for parents who are working 2 jobs, who don't have time off, particularly in communities where there are low-wage workers, to be able to pick their child up. That will be a very interesting and hopefully an assessment that can be done.
Yeah, so I think it's really important for people to understand that this law is not just about your own health, the health of the worker, but you can take this time to take care of your children or take care of your parents.
Why don't you talk about who is able to be part of that family?
Right, we're covering care of all close family members, and that includes your children, your parents, your spouse, your domestic partner, grandparents, grandchildren, and siblings. So you can take care of any of those family members who are ill. And although there are many people who have paid sick time. Some of those policies and some of the companies have only been about your own health, so that you couldn't take a day off to take care of your child when they were sick. That's changed now. Paid sick days, as you earn them, have to be available also for your family members.
Right. And that makes sense. I'm sure
Yes.
that anybody who's got kids hopefully will understand that
Yeah.
this is a big deal.
Yeah.
And we had more parents come to our events perhaps than any other constituency, and parents who have time off, because I don't know, we all know if your kid is sick, then you're sick, the whole family's sick. It makes a big difference.
Yeah.
Right, and you save, as a parent, I think we all know, you save your time so you can take care of your child, because you're not going to leave them home alone sick.
Right.
And the fact that anybody in the city had to make that choice between going to work and losing a day's pay and taking care of their child, or even risking their job, was just, that I think was one of the best arguments
Yeah, it
for paid
was.
sick time.
That's great.
This has been a great discussion, but unfortunately we are out of time. And I thank Sherry Leiwant of A Better Balance and Barbara Sibley from La Palapa Cocina Mexicana for being here and for sharing their insight, their really special insight about the city's new paid sick leave law. Please visit our website on this issue, www.manhattanbp.nyc.gov/paid sick leave, or email me at gbrewer@manhattanbp.nyc.gov with any questions or suggestions you have on this topic, or if you have any other concerns. You should also call 311, and I think you see on this program, you'll see the hotline number for A Better Balance. You should also contact them. The phone number, in case you need it, is 212-430-5982. And thank you for watching Represent NYC on Manhattan Neighborhood Network. I'm Gale Brewer. I work for you on the Manhattan Borough President. Thank you very much.